Hey guys, this is Daniel Dr. D, and I wanted to share a story with you guys about a speaker called the Qualio Ultra. And I had an opportunity to listen to a pair of them. I'm going to go into detail about that, but I want to first explain to you why the speaker was of interest to me. There's a couple of gentlemen on the Klipsch Community forum. There's another one of them is Shaky Deal, is a pretty experienced Klipsch owner, more than I have been. And then there's another one named Fido, and both of them had brought up this speaker called the Qualio, and I just thought it was interesting because this Qualio speaker is like an open baffle speaker, and partially open baffle, and then it uses a bass box, as you can see in the illustrations here. But what's interesting about it is it uses a ribbon tweeter. It's a three-way. It's about the size of a Klipsch Forte. And the reason it caught my attention is because these two gentlemen in this forum are both Klipsch listeners, so they're into horn speakers. So I found it kind of compelling and curious to hear what they had to say about it. And, had a few exchanges. And then finally, I had corresponded with Fido to see about listening to them. And he was kind enough to let me come listen to his Qualio Ultras, and he uses a Evo 400 with the KT 150 tubes. I'll get into that in just a moment, but the thing that's interesting is you have to remember this Qualio speaker is partially open baffle, and Steve Huff did a video on it and said it was like the best speaker he's ever listened to. Now, I think those of you who know Huff know that he has let's face it, he has a new favorite speaker every few months, so it's hard to get a real assessment from his reviews, but it still offered a little bit of information, made me curious more. But what was most curious to me is that the fact that Fido and Shaky Deal had both found an interest in this speaker, and that was what really compelled me. Now, the tweeter is ribbon, as I mentioned, but it apparently goes up to something like 30 kilohertz or more, I think. And then the bass goes down to like 28 hertz. So that's quite a broad spectrum. And that was another thing that I found compelling about it. They're pretty pricey, of course. They're probably going to cost you like what a pair of Los Galos would cost you, or a pair of Klipsch horns, depending on how you have it. Now, the one that I went to hear with Fido, David, is his name. His are like the top of the line models. Now they have these attenuators that you can adjust the top end on them. Now a lot of people will say, you can't hear beyond 20 kilohertz, right, for a young person. And I did one of those YouTube tests with some earbuds. It's nothing official, but just to see. And where I topped out, it was about 13 and a half kilohertz. After that, I think you need to be a dog to listen to anything beyond that. But I don't think it is about the numbers. I think it is more about the design of that tweeter using a ribbon, which is interesting. The other thing that's important is the genre of music. And when I had approached the forum, the Klipsch forum, and asked these guys, Shaky as well as Fido, what music they were listening to. They're not really listening to jazz the way I do. I'm primarily listening to jazz and blues. And so I don't like the sound of conventional tweeters. They just don't bring out that ambiance that you get with a horn when you're listening to jazz. It just doesn't sound as authentic, or I don't know, that cliche organic, if you want to put it. And but I have always been impressed with ribbon tweeters. My friend Luigi's got a pair. I can't remember what they're called, but they had a ribbon tweeter, and I was quite fascinated with the sparkle in the top end. The three speakers that I primarily listen to are the Magnapan LRS Plus, the RC2, and the Forte ones from Klipsch. And if I really wanted to, I could get more sparkle out of the top end. All I have to do, there's a couple options. All I have to do is get one of those modern Chi-Fi amps, or I can just switch out my tubes to get more of that effect. Now, the reason I was using the Nestone EL34 tubes on my Dynaco ST70 was to help kind of mellow out that top end, smooth it out, and make it more pleasant. And it worked quite effectively. So hearing more details is not necessarily, at least in my opinion, based on my listening experiences, not necessarily the better thing. It can get fatiguing after a while. And I think that the way you tailor or tune your system will have a tremendous impact on that effect. And you have to decide, do you want more or less? And that's going to be subjective. That's going to be on you. I think there's more to it than just having a lot of detail. You can't just, let me just tell you this. I went down and I listened to the Qualio. And Fido's room is about the size of my living room. I think it was like 15 feet in width, and the length of the room, I think it looked like it was like 25 feet or so. So it was a pretty decent sized room. And what he did is when he played that Evo 400 with those KT 150 tubes, I did notice there was an obvious amount of bass, so it's very evident. The top end at low volume, as you guys, some of you may know, I like to be able to hear those details at low volume. You can hear all that. It's in fact, it's probably a little bit overwhelming if I'm being honest. And I was discussing this with David, goes by the name Fido on the Klipsch Community. Really nice guy, by the way. It was very nice of him to invite me over and give me an opportunity to listen to that. So I was very grateful. But I was trying to explain to him what my feelings were on this Qualio. And I think this is the double-edged sword of high-end speakers like this, is that they can be so revealing sometimes that you can actually hear things in the recordings that you don't really want to hear. And if you look at like this album behind me by Quebec, which is the album that we played, you could hear, these are older recordings, so you don't want to have, in my opinion, you don't want to have a speaker that's going to reveal every single flaw, because these old recordings, there are things that you probably may not want to hear. So I try to get it the top end, that tonality, so that it's not overly revealing. I had a friend, my friend Marco. He also has an Evo 400. I've reviewed that Evo 400. You can look at my channel, you'll see it. He has his room is very bright, and he was playing this recording one time. I said, man, there's something going on with your system. He's like, no, it's in the recording. I'm like, really? So what I did is I had that album I brought it home and I played it on my system. What I did is I took my Dynaco Pass 3 preamp and I turned the treble all the way up as high as it could go. And sure enough, I could hear this unwanted noise that I was not hearing. And so this is the thing. Do you want to have so much detail that you hear all these imperfections, and is that a good thing? Because now you're forced to have really great recordings. So how do you take advantage of a speaker like a Qualio if you don't have really good recordings? And I played this album by Dominic, which is very well recorded, very smooth. It's a modern recording. And even that sort of had a kind of it was sort of a grainy kind of sound. When I listened to it and the way my systems are set up in my rooms, obviously those are different rooms. You have to take that into account. But the way I have it set up for me is it is very smooth and silky. And if you put your earbuds on and listen to some of the recordings that I post for you guys, you'll see that some of those recordings they sound pretty smooth. I think they do. I listen to other recordings with earbuds. We can only get so much with earbuds. We have to be honest. It's just to give you a sort of an idea of how things sound. They're never going to be like what you hear in real life, right? Of course, we know that. But it does give ideas. And I think this is where the high-end speakers like the Qualio are going to be like a double-edged sword. you're going to have to feed it with a very good high quality amp, very smooth amp, a warm amp to help offset that very revealing sound that they have. In fairness to David, I said, listen, why don't you work with those attenuators? Now, those attenuators are really important. Fido, just recently got these Qualio speakers, so he's going to have to spend some time to get them set up properly. And they seem promising. I can't say that I'm completely sure that I'm sold on the Qualio speakers because I feel like Fido needs to spend some time himself to get them set up properly with the attenuators and even the way his amplifier is. And I have to emphasize that the Evos are very bright. These integrated amps are very bright and very analytical in sound. I know some people are a big fan of the Evo, and it may be good for some speakers. But in my opinion, based on my empirical listening experiences as well as Bob, it is what I would describe as that modern tube sound, which is that very bright. It's almost kind of shrill in my opinion. It just doesn't have that classic tube sound the way I've heard. Now, what I would like to do, and maybe if David is open to it, is to bring my Dynaco ST70 down to his place, and maybe my Aretha or my Dynaco Pass 3, and set it up, because that will alter that. It will, I think, in my opinion, based on my comparisons with the Evo, it will smooth out that. It'll have a warmer rendering, no doubt, in my mind. The other option is that if David can get the the attenuators worked out, maybe that will be enough. I think that the Qualio speaker has the potential to do good. I think it just needs setting up properly, and I think those who are considering a Qualio speaker, you really have to take all these situations into consideration. How bright your room is. David, who goes by Fido in the Klipsch forum, I think he had a carpeted floor, so I think his room was pretty, it wasn't a bright room, so, and yet the speakers were so bright, so very, very revealing. Kind of shrill, if I'm being honest with you, but in fairness, it is a good speaker. It's got all the potential to do well, and I think if you amplify it right and you attenuate it right, I think it could be a pretty impressive speaker. And I said, listen, why don't you spend a month with it? Maybe in a month from now I'll come down and listen again, and maybe we can see how it sounds then once you have it properly tuned. So for now, I'm still happy with what I have. I'm not completely sold on the Qualio just yet, but that remains to be seen, because I think eventually down the line I do want to take another step up, either with a K-horn or a La Scala. I want to have a fully horn-loaded speaker. Now, I have heard the K-horns in a few good settings that really impress me by comparison. And but these are all different rooms, different settings, different amps. I mean, there's all sorts of factors that affect this outcome. But for me, for now, I still think that I need more time with that Qualio. So as it progresses, I'll let you guys know how it goes. I want to thank David, aka Fido, for allowing me opportunity to listen to his speakers. I'm sure they're going to be very nice once he gets them set up. So, all right, back at you soon.